You feel all right. So I'm Tracy. I'm an alcoholic. Hey guys. Um, so I'm gonna try to speak slowly because I'm kind of nervous. I don't do a whole lot of Zoom. I did like initially when COVID first hit. Um, and I am super grateful for Zoom, but I don't do it a whole lot lately, so I'm not real good with it. So hopefully you all can hear me and everything. Um, Um, but first I just want to say what an honor it is to be here with you guys tonight, just speaking about this beautiful solution that God has given us. Because it has truly saved my life and absolutely changed me from the inside out. 100%. And I give all the credit to God and the program of Alcoholics Anonymous for sure. So my sobriety date is September 18th of 2017. That is the day that I got honest about my relapse. That was not my first sobriety date. And I don't even know the last day that I drank or used something. I just know the day that I got honest about it because I was never going to tell any of you guys. I was never going to tell my husband. I was never going to tell my sponsor. I had kind of justified it in my head. And rationalized it like we do. And I was just going to like get back to it. But I'm so thankful that I went to a meeting one night. And at the end of the meeting, they asked, are there any burning desires? And it was like God pulled honesty out of my mouth. And the whole time I'm sharing honestly about it, I'm like trying to stop talking. I'm like, no, God, I don't want to say that, but oh, it needed to happen. And I'm so grateful that it did. So the first time that I ever put alcohol into my body, I was 16 years old. And I was always like super anxious, really worried about what other people thought, wanted people to like me, thought I had to be perfect, just all that stuff. And I'd already kind of gotten to the point in my life where I needed that outside validation to feel okay about myself. I never felt okay on the inside. And I remember the first time that I drank, all of that instantly melted. All the fear, all the worry, all the anxiety. And I chased that, I chased that for the next 14 years. And I didn't get sober till I was 30. So for the next 16 years, I just pretty much chased that feeling of that ease and comfort and just, because I was, and I'm just kind of a high strung person anyway, and AA has helped me so much with, just being able to like be in my own skin. But I struggled my late teenage years. When I was 21, I was in college and I had to drop out of college because my partying got to, it was the main focus of my life, and I love Alcoholics Anonymous. And this is something that I talked to Phil about too the other day, because I respect singleness of purpose, but in order to like honestly share with you guys, I mean, other substances do play a part in my story. And what I realized today and looking back on that, like the disease of alcoholism for me manifested itself in so many ways throughout my life. And it took many different forms. And I love how the book says, alcohol in any form. And for me, that's anything that's mind or mood altering that can change the way that I feel. And I will go to that, and I did, and I chased it all. Anything and everything somebody would put in front of me, I would do because I, number one, didn't know who I was on the inside. And number two, what I did know, I did not like, and so I chased that. And so when I was 21, I was already heavy drinking, heavy using other substances. I flunked out of college. ended up and found out I was pregnant. And, you know, that was kind of, I had already kind of sought out help. I'd been like in and out of AA. Well, not really in, but I'd been to meetings, I'd been to meetings. When I first flunked out of college, I got honest with my parents, and they helped me get into like an intensive outpatient program in the area. And so I had been kind of exposed, and that was probably my first AA meeting. I'm sitting there at 19 years old, and I go to this intensive outpatient program. And of course, like, I'm messed up there, because I'm having these outside consequences, but yet the pain has not become great enough for me to really want to be sober, but I'm just trying to like make my family happy. So I'm there, I'm messed up, I'm sitting in these groups, and these people bring in an AA meeting. And I live in Kingsport, Tennessee. Serenity Improvement Group is my home group as well. And I wish I could remember the people that brought the meeting in that night, because I'm sure it was probably some of still the old timers that are around now. But that was my kind of first taste of AA. And I was just young, and I was still having fun somewhat, you know what I mean? And so I just continued to chase that. And when I found out I was pregnant with my son, there was a lot of guilt and shame. And, because at that point, I wanted to stop doing what I was doing with every fiber in my being, because I had this little baby inside of my body. You know what I mean? Before, it was just me, and I didn't really care about myself. But I knew this baby inside of me was worth me, getting sober for. But I was too ashamed to like walk into a meeting and say, listen, I cannot even stay sober for this baby inside of me. I need help. I couldn't do that. My pride kept me sick. And so I white knuckled it and white knuckled it and white knuckled it. And unsuccessfully, very unsuccessfully, I'd white knuckle it for a couple of weeks, and then I'd go binge, and white knuckle it for a couple of weeks, and then I'd go binge. And I remember the night before I went into labor with my son, I put substances in my body, and went into labor the next morning, went in there, and I was so afraid they were going to take that baby from me. It wasn't even like I'm concerned about the welfare of this baby. It was like, how's this going to affect me? Are they going to take my son from me? Are they going to find these substances in my body and take my baby? And they didn't, because at that time, I think I kind of hid it pretty well. Like, I was good at wearing that mask, and they didn't test the amniotic sac at that point, or whatever they do now, so they let me leave the hospital with that baby. And I'm telling you, it got so much worse so quick. And the next basically 4 years of my life is an absolute blur. Like, how I kept that child alive was only the God's grace, 100%. And how the baby was healthy was only God's grace, when he was 4 years old, his dad got sober and petitioned for custody of our son. And at that time, I felt like I deserved a break, like, it was super sick, my thought process with that. But I just felt like I deserved a break. And I thought, well, his dad needs to do something, in the court papers, it said in 90 days it could be overturned. And so I thought, well, okay, in 90 days, I'll get my son back. It's going to be fine. I'm going to have a little vacation. And, now's the time to focus on me. Like, I hadn't been doing that my whole life already, And so 90 days turned into 6 months, turned into a year, turned into basically 3 years. And again, that whole 3 years was a blur. Toward the end of it, I absolutely wanted to kill myself every single day. I never would have said that out loud to anybody, because I was so afraid that I would never get my son back. You know what I mean? Like, if they know what's going on in my head, really, I'll never get to be a mom to my child. And that was my biggest thing. I didn't love myself. I did not feel like I was worthy of any kind of good life at this point. But I still had that like thought of like, one day I'm gonna be a good mom to my son again. But I was so deep in this disease and chasing the alcohol and the other stuff so hard. I mean, I was blinded by that. And my whole thing was, I'll go to rehab tomorrow. I'll get sober tomorrow. I'll go to a meeting tomorrow, but tonight I'm gonna get good and messed up, and that's how I lived my life for all the years that I didn't have my son. And there at the end of 2013 was my absolute darkest year. When I read Bill's story, once I finally got into the program and got a sponsor and stuff, like where he talks about, that bleak November and the bitter morass of self-pity, oh, I could just relate so much to that. Because Thanksgiving weekend of 2013 was kind of like my last, I don't know, binge, blackout. It pretty much solidified my rock bottom, and I'm so thankful for that. And the Monday after, and I had been previous years, I went to inpatient treatment. You guys, I had been in and out of AA and other 12-step meetings the span of my entire drinking career, but like I never got a sponsor. I might get a couple numbers, but like I just wanted to go sit in a meeting, get what you had somehow magically, and walk out the room happy, joyous, and free. And that never happened. And it pissed me off. And it made me think, this is BS. This stuff doesn't work. I'm just going to go get messed up. These people are like, there's no way that these people have been what I've been through. There's no way. Maybe they're like high bottom and they were just, like maybe they can get sober, but there's no way I can, and that was how my mind went. And finally, like I said, at the end of 2013, I mean, the pain had just become so great in my life. And it was absolutely either truly kill myself and follow through with these thoughts that I'd had in my head for the past year, or, do something different. And God, God gave me this moment of clarity, I think in November before the Thanksgiving weekend. He gave me this moment of clarity, and I put my name on the waiting list for like an inpatient treatment center in my area, because by this point I knew I needed inpatient treatment. Like I had nobody sober in my life. I was completely alienated from my family who loved me so dearly. I was facing having my parental rights terminated with my son. And, I was just completely broken. And even though I put my name on the waiting list for this treatment center, God still had to allow me to experience the shitstorm that was Thanksgiving weekend 2013 for me to even get to that inpatient bed that was waiting on me. Because I didn't walk in there voluntarily. It was, I ended up getting into this huge, I blacked out for 2 days, ended up getting in this huge physical altercation with this girl, which ended with her running me over with her car. And when I got to the hospital that night, miraculously, nothing was broken. But of course, they called the cops. I had been up for days. I'd been drinking and using everything under the sun. I mean, I'd just been hit by a car. I guess they always call the cops when that happens. I don't know. But finally, when I realized like that they were not going to give me any kind of pain pill, because I'm like, look, I've been hit by a car. I am hurting. Like I need something for pain. And when I finally realized that they weren't going to give me anything for pain, I just completely broke down and was like, listen, I'm going to die. I need help so desperately. I'm on the waiting list for this inpatient treatment center. Please help me or I'm going to die. And they did. And they called in crisis. And my mom and dad came to the hospital, and I hadn't seen them. And Well, I'd seen my mom pretty recently, but like I said, we were super alienated. They found Al-Anon super quick in my uh in my journey. So that was helpful. That probably saved my life because early on my parents figured out how to not enable me, how to detach with love, and how to tell me no to save my life. And I'm so grateful for that. Um, but I called them from the hospital that night and they came to pick me up and let me stay the night with them. And they took me to treatment the next day. And I was 30 years old, did not have a dime to my name, did not have a car, did not have a cell phone. I mean, um, when I got sober and actually came into the real world, like with some clarity, it was like I was in technology was different. It was like I had been living in a cave for the past 14 years. Um, Everybody had smartphones. Like I didn't even know what that was. It was so crazy to me. Um, but I went to inpatient treatment December 2nd of 2013. I stayed for 28 days. And the treatment center that I went to was big, 12-step, abstinence based, beautiful, good stuff. And I needed that so bad. And they brought in AA. They took us out to AA meetings. Because even though, alcohol was the first substance I ever used, and I used it continuously um, throughout my time in my journey and stuff. I still didn't think I was an alcoholic. It took me a lot to realize I was an alcoholic. And I remember in the treatment center that I went to, the AA ladies would come in and, I would talk to them about that honestly. I don't know that I am an alcoholic. Um, and and they were like, well, listen, you just go to whatever meeting you can get to, identify as an alcoholic out of respect for the program, and just look for somebody who has what you want, in the different meetings that you go to, ask them to sponsor you, and do that. And that's what I did. And I'm so grateful that I did that, because the day I got out of rehab, um, I went to a meeting that night. It was in another fellowship. And the very next day, I went to a noon AA meeting. It was actually the Lunch Bunch in Bristol, Tennessee. It's where I went. And and um, and I saw a lady there who I recognized because she came in and spoke at the treatment center. And I asked her to be my sponsor. And you guys, I was so scared because I had that fear of rejection. And I didn't really know what a sponsor did or what it meant. All I knew was in rehab, they told me I had to get one. And that was something I had heard in the rooms when I had been in and out for years, but I had never taken that suggestion, you know, because it scared me. And I was afraid, they would say no, or that I would be a burden, or I didn't even understand how it would work anyway. And I asked this lady to sponsor me, and she was like, absolutely. Do you have a big book? And I was like, no, and I don't have any money. And she was like, here, and she fronted me a big book, and I paid her back for that, and we got into the steps together. And I think what happened for me is at that point, I was just so broken that I was willing to believe that maybe, just maybe, this thing would work. Because I heard other people say, what they had done, and that they had done things that I had done, which I'd lived in so much shame and guilt with for so many years. Like abandoning my son, that was probably my main, as a mother, um, you know, when the substances are finally removed from your system and you have to sit looking face to face at that, like, I abandoned my child to continue, drinking and using. Like, I mean, that's a hard reality. And that's something that I struggled with for so long. Like, in order to even face that, I had to put something in my body to, like, numb that out a little bit. And so it was like this vicious cycle. Um, But, in working with my sponsor and getting to know other women in the program who had that experience also, and who was able to like help me to see that I wasn't a bad person. I wasn't a bad mom. I was just really sick, and that this program could help me get better. And that no matter, even if I ever got my son back in my life, um, that God had a plan for me and that it would be okay, and I needed that so bad because I'm facing having these parental rights terminated. I don't have a time machine. I can't go back and change anything. It's just I have to, take things one day at a time, hand in hand with these other women in the program, trusting God through it all. And so that's what I did. And that's what I continue to do to the best of my ability. Um, but you guys, my life started changing quickly when I started going to, and I went to meetings every day. Like I went to a meeting every day that they, that's in the treatment center I went to, they said 90 and 90. It doesn't say that in the big book at all. Because when the big book was written, there was not meetings every day. And there was only a few. But I did not, like I said, I did not have any sober people in my life. And I knew that I could not go back to the few friends that I did have at that point because I wanted to be sober. And my experience before, when I had gotten out of rehab or whatever, I'd go right back to the same boyfriend. I'd go right back to the same group of friends, and I would never stay sober. I'd be drunk or high that night, and that I knew this time I had to do that different. So going to meetings every day really helped me just build, like I started making friends. I found a home. Serenity Improvement Group in Kingsport became a home group. And I loved that meeting. There was a noon meeting every day. There was another meeting at night. And those people loved me. And I finally started realizing that, and this was through going to meetings every day and then also working with my sponsor and getting in the book, like holy shit, I am an alcoholic. Like, wow, I was shocked, because I didn't think, I just really truly didn't think I was, because I put so much emphasis on like the substances that I was using instead of the disease of alcoholism that I had inside of me. And today I know that that is my problem, my inability to live life on life's terms, in this disease, the spiritual malady that I have. And I was always trying to fill that God-sized hole inside of me with something other than God, whether it was a man, whether it was, alcohol, whether it was, any alcohol in any form. I'll put it in me to try to fill up inside of me because I'm empty and I need something. Um, and I just will never forget the day I was sitting in a noon AA meeting. And this was super early on. I probably didn't even have 2 months sober yet, but I'd already started working with my sponsor. And I just remember, like, in that moment, I acknowledged like this hole inside of me was full now, and it was overflowing to the point like it felt like it was bursting, like inside of me, this empty place that I'd had for so long. And I couldn't hardly sit still because, like, when you've been empty for so long and then, AA and God start filling you up, it is the best feeling I had ever felt. And I couldn't contain it. I could not contain it. And so I continued to work the steps with my sponsor. I got my son back in my life, who I was facing having my rights terminated too. I got to be a mom to him again. Even today, his dad still has physical custody, but I get him for almost half the week. And I'm just grateful that I get that, because I almost lost that boy, and due to my own actions. It was all problems of my own making, even though I wanted to blame his dad for years. But working through the 4-step and seeing where I was at fault in those things, and then sharing all my gunk with my sponsor, who I started building this relationship with, who I trusted with everything. And, it was just this experience. I had never shared all of myself with anybody in that way until I did my first fifth step. And even those things that I was like, I'm never going to tell anybody that. Never, just to share them with her and her not judge me and her be like, I did that too, like we are not that unique, and we're all sick, and our sickness manifests in different ways, but just being able to share that with somebody, and then going and spending that first full hour with God after that first fifth step. And I was sitting out by the river and just, I'm seeing all these defects. I'm seeing how they have just ran rampant in my life, and just, God, please take them from me. I'm willing for you to have them. Take them, everyone. And and then starting and going out and making amends. I got to make amends to my son, who was, I think he was about 9 when I made my amends to him, and we were sitting on the trampoline, and I had been sober for about a year at that time, and I'd been showing up every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'd been going to all his football games. I'd been going to his wrestling, and I remember sitting down with him, and I don't remember exactly what I said, because he's 9, but just getting to, take responsibility for where I've hurt him, and tell him how wrong I was and how sorry I am. And, ask him if there's anything that I left out. And then when I looked at him and I said, Eli, what can I do to make it right? He looked at me with his little 9-year-old eyes and he said, you already have, by just showing up for him and just being there for him. And, he didn't call me mom when I got sober, by the way. He called me Tracy, because I did not, I did not, I was not present in that boy's life for several years. And, today he calls me mom again. And I'm so thankful for that. But even if that had never happened with him, I know that I would be okay with God and with you guys, but continuing to work through the steps. So making these amends, I get to step 10 and 11. I pretty much skip over them. Okay. During this time, I just skip over 10 and 11. I don't know if a lot of people do that, but I did, because I didn't really understand it. I'm like, it sounds good in theory. And I just jumped into step 12. And so I started carrying the message, sponsoring other people, and get a couple of sponsees. And then life starts happening. We get sober, we get a good job, we get, yeah, I got married, I got pregnant again, I got back into school. Well, I hadn't been in school, in college. I hadn't been in so many years after dropping out when I was, um, you know, 19. And life gets busy, and you know what I let happen? I let the worldly clamors of life get in the way of what this beautiful program tells us we must do. And so I just kind of started pulling away from recovery. Like, the 2 girls I was sponsoring would call, and I'd think, well, they're doing good, I'll call them back later, I'm busy. I'd be tired when I got off work, so I wouldn't go to a meeting. I wasn't doing, I was praying a little bit, but I definitely wasn't actively practicing 10 and 11. Like, I would get a resentment at work or something, and I would think, okay, well, I'm just going to put that in my pocket for when I do my next 4 step. Like, that defeats the whole purpose of step 10. You know what I mean? We get to clean out that gunk daily, so we don't have to continue putting this stuff in our pocket until they're so full and we become so miserable we go drink again. That's what 10 and 11, 12 are for. They're the maintenance steps. And I was not maintaining what this beautiful program had given me at all. And that lasted for about, I don't know, 6 months or so. And then I went into the hospital to have my daughter. And I'm telling you guys, when they, at that point, I was not doing anything that the book tells us we must do. I think I thought I was at that time, but I was not. Recovery was not my main priority. Um, was not practicing any kind of spiritual maintenance at all. I was like totally about Tracy again. And when I went in there, I had to have an emergency C-section, and they gave me this pain medicine in the hospital. And I'm telling you what, it flipped that allergy so hard that my brain instantly was like, that's the solution again. Like I felt it. And I love how the book talks about, we cannot use alcohol in any form. And because that to me helps me see that anything like that can flip that allergy inside of me. And looking back on that, I truly believe if I had been doing what the program tells us we must do, if I had been actively living in 10, 11, and 12, I could have been safe and protected. The medicine just could have been medicine like it's designed to be. And I could have been okay, but because I was not doing any of those things, it flipped that allergy. I freaking felt it flip. And in my mind, I was already off to the races. And so I went home from the hospital with this new baby, and I struggled. I struggled hard. I struggled hard all day long. That pain pill prescription that they gave me was in the back drawer. It was talking to me all day long. Take me, take 4 or 5 of me, plan the perfect time, to do it. And I had a sponsor at that time, and I was really trying to like have some accountability about it, but I wasn't being honest with her from the jump. Like, I was taking them from the very first dose that I took. I was taking more than I needed to take. And I justified it in my head. I justified it in my head, and I was hurting. Um, but I wasn't taking it because I was hurting. I was taking it because the allergy had been triggered and the phenomenon of craving had set in, and that had become my solution again. And so I ended up, my friend came over and in the program, and I got honest with her about, what was going on in my head. And she said, Tracy, I mean, I didn't get honest with her that I'd taken them differently than they were prescribed. So I did not get honest that I'd already kind of relapsed. But I got honest with her about the crazy stuff going on in my head. And she said, let's get rid of them. Let's flush them. I had like 16 pills left, and she flushed them with me. And when she flushed them, it was like a relief, but also like a kick in the gut, like, oh God, that's my solution. But I remember like I went to a meeting the next day, and I shared about it. And, how proud of myself I was. And I mean, I don't know. But anyway, I still had not got connected back to this solution. And I'm thinking, I just need to get back in the meetings. I got to get back to doing what I need to do, and I'm going to be okay. And so at that very same time, my husband's grandmother got sick, um, really sick. She was 92 years old. And so we were living with her to help take care of her, and her health just started declining. So I'm home with a newborn baby. And now I have a 92-year-old woman that I'm responsible for full care for. And this allergy had already been triggered. I'm not reconnected to the solution yet. And I'm in charge of giving her medicine. And she's prescribed narcotics. I mean, she needed them. They were medicine. She needed them, but she had a lot extra. And I remember there was 3 separate times I took, pain medicine. That was her medicine. As I was fixing her medicine, I'd give her 2, and I'd put 2 to the side for me. And I did that 3 different times. And I remember the last time, my son was there, and And I just remember how icky and how guilty and how shameful I felt. And I didn't want to do that anymore, you know. So I'm like, okay, I just got to get back to it. Got to get back connected to the solution. Got to get back to the meetings. Got to figure this thing out. And but I was never going to tell anybody that I had done that. Never, you know, because I justified it in my mind. I thought, well, I flushed what they prescribed me. So technically, those weren't even as powerful as what they had given me. So really, it's not a relapse and this and that. And that's when God led me to the meeting that night where he pulled the honesty out of my mouth. And I just broke down, you know, I broke down and finally admitted, you know, that I had relapsed. I needed help. You know, I was drowning in this. And I went to meetings for a few weeks and a couple of days. Well, I went to meetings for a few weeks and I went and picked up a girl who she was one of my sponsees that I had when I had relapsed, when I stopped answering the phone with, you know. I picked her up and we were going to go to a meeting. And on the way to the meeting, I was sharing what was in my head. And she looked at me and she said, Tracy, if you do not get back into the steps, you are going to die. And I said, I know, but I'm kind of in between sponsors. I don't know, you know. And she looked me dead in the eye and she said, Tracy, turn the car around. We'll go back to my house and I'll take you through the steps. And God used her to save my life that day. And I'm so thankful for that woman because even though I took her through the steps, like she was going to big book studies, she was going to solution-based meetings. She was like a big book thumper. And I needed that in my life. I needed it so bad then. I need it so bad today because I love meetings and I know that all the three sides of the triangle are so important. We have to have all of them. But guys, these are the precise instructions for how we can live life happy, joyous, and free. And we can go to a lot of meetings and we can hear a lot of stuff that's not in the pages of this book. And you know, I heard one of my friends share at a meeting. He said, you know, his sponsor told him, never let somebody tell you what the big book says. You read it yourself. And I loved that because this is what's proven to work. Other people's opinions and other people's experiences. I mean, it's beautiful things to share and hear and take into account. But listen, if I'm dying inside and I'm drowning in this disease, I need precise instructions of what to do to recover. And I need somebody who's done these precise instructions to take me through that. And that's exactly what this woman did. And I'm so grateful for that today. She took me through the steps quickly and we put pen to paper quickly. And she helped me very quickly see that service is how is how important service is. Because before I knew service was important, you know, like I know I'm supposed to carry this message. I know I'm supposed to sponsor other women. But, you know, like in Bill's story, I think it's at the bottom of page 14 or 15, you know, how it talks about, you know, if we fail to enlarge our spiritual condition or something. I'm terrible with quoting the big book, but it talks about, you know, we grow spiritually through work and self-sacrifice for others. And I remember I sat down with her one day and I told her, I'm like working on my sex inventory or something. And I'm just telling her how disconnected I felt. Because when we come in here and that empty place gets filled up and then it becomes empty again, as it can, with or without picking up the bottle again, you know, if we're not actively growing spiritually, we can become empty again. And after we felt full, it's very, very noticeable and it does not feel good. And we know what we're missing now. You know, when I start to get empty again, I know what I'm missing. And she said, well, what are you doing for service? And I said, well, I am, or she said, what are you doing to seek God? What are you doing to grow spiritually? And I'm like, well, I'm trying to get back into church. I'm trying to pray. I am doing my best to meditate. And she said, what are you doing to help others? And I was like, well, no, I don't know. And she named a treatment center here in this area. She said, don't they take an AA meeting into that treatment center? And I was like, I don't know. And she said, find out. And she said, go. And I'm telling you, I asked around about it, found out we had a 6 o'clock AA commitment at this local treatment center for years, and women had not been showing up. So guess what? I suit up and show up, and I start going every week. And I'm telling you, through doing that, through doing all three sides of the triangle simultaneously, I got that spiritual connection so quickly in even a stronger way than I ever had those first 3.5 years in the program. And like what I see looking back on that now is, you know, today to the best of my ability, and I'm so imperfect, but I believe what the words say in this book. It doesn't just sound like something theoretically beautiful to me anymore. Like, oh, that sounds good in theory. Like, no, today I need to take this literally. If I want these promises that this book has to offer, and I 100% do in my life today, I want them so desperately. I know that I have to literally do what it's telling me to do. Um, and I have seen from my experience that if I do that, um, I get what I was always looking for through the alcohol, through the other substances. I get that connection. I get that inner fulfillment. And I can be at that place where I'm recovered today, as long as I continue doing what the book says I must do. And that includes 10, 11, 12 every freaking day, living in that. And like I said, I do that very imperfectly. I'll be the first person to say that. I'm not disciplined at all with it. I wish I could say I was more, but I'm doing it to the best of my ability. And today I have about a little over 4 years sober again. And I am grateful for that. And I'm grateful because even more than I'm grateful for the time, I'm so grateful for that this time around. Like, I truly got connected to this book in a way that I had never been before. And, and I really I don't know. I'm just super grateful for this program. I know that it works. I know that it can work for anybody who is willing enough to go to any lengths to get it. And I think that is all that I've got. So thank you guys for letting me share with you all so much.